there was a doctor who's been poisoning his next door neighbors. And then also we're going to talk about all the stuff that just happened down at Burning Man.
Burning Man 2023 has made headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. Torrential rain, extreme flooding, climate protesters blocking the entrance.
And lastly, there's been a dentist that's been practicing in America without a license.
Well, 2 men from New Jersey are under arrest and charged with performing dentistry without a license.
So there's this guy, he went to college, he became a chemist, he's a legit doctor, and he's started poisoning the family. And come to find out, they checked their doorbell camera, and they see him there with a syringe pumping poison into their apartment.
Burning Man, right, the infamous kind of hippie gathering, a lot of drugs, totally Gary Nice thing, right? This year, which doesn't happen normally, there was a bunch of rain during Burning Man, and what happens is this old lake bed starts becoming really clay.
There's nothing there. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no water, there's no food, there's nothing. Recently, there's been a dentist that has been practicing down there without a license.
He had a license, right? He's gone to school. It's not like he wasn't properly trained, but he got his license revoked back in 2019. He just finally got caught again and is now getting put into jail, or I guess he's going to go through the process, might end up in jail, right? So I'm curious how many unlicensed dentists are out there actually practicing.
I've been doing it for 20 years and I've never been caught. Welcome back to another episode of Dental Rift. I'm your co-host, Gary Bird. I'm the founder of SMC National, where we help you create, convert, and close more new patients so you can grow the way that you want.
My name is Tanner Applegate. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Unified Dental. We are a software solution helping bring together all the different tools you use to make your team more efficient.
So Tanner, I got 3 really good topics today. So number 1, there was a doctor who's been poisoning his next door neighbors and he got caught. And then also we're going to talk about all the stuff that just happened down at Burning Man, which I'm interested to learn more about that. And then lastly, there's been a dentist that's been practicing in America without a license. So let's first of all talk about that chemist. So there's this guy, he went to college, he became a chemist, he's a legit doctor, and he has upstairs neighbors. He lives in a condo, and the next upstairs neighbors had a baby, and that baby was crying, right? That's what babies do. And he was really upset about it and just like not happy. And so what he started to do was he started to go under the door of this condo and started squirting poison, because he's a chemist, right? So he knows how to poison people. And he's started poisoning the family, and the baby started vomiting, and like all these crazy things started happening. And so they had the condo people come in and check everything. They checked the plumbing, they checked the air vents, they checked everything. They thought maybe it was mold.
They replaced a lot of it.
Yeah, they replaced everything. And come to find out, they checked their doorbell camera, and they see him there with a syringe pumping poison into their apartment.
Yeah, that was the thing, is he set up a camera, but the camera angle first when they set it up didn't catch anything. They saw him kind of duck down and duck away, but you couldn't see it. But then the second one, this is something that you guys should look up, is he literally goes up the stairs, stands by the door, fills up a syringe. Then the camera angles perfectly where it goes underneath the door to let this fumes into the house. And it was mind blowing. I mean, I think that they're smart enough to to check it. Because for me, if I'm like, oh, my family's getting sick, I'm not going to go and be like, oh, someone's maliciously affecting me.
Yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
if I had some issues with my neighbor downstairs, I might go down that road, but not seriously.
Hey, I got something crazy to share with you, and I'm going to get you right back to the show, I promise. So we have an event called AlignerCon coming up next year, and this month we're giving away a buy one, get one free. We're going to be partnering with Clear Correct, and this is going to be one of the biggest events that we've ever done in Nashville, Tennessee, in the biggest hotel in America. If you want to come to this, again, we're going to give you a buy one, get one free. We want to meet you in person. Just go to alignercon.com, and we're going to teach you how to create, convert, close, and even some clinical components around clear aligners. So don't miss this event. Go check it out now. Back to the show.
At first.
Because when it first started, he was a PhD student. He wasn't even a PhD, right? Once he got caught, he'd actually graduated with his PhD, but he was a PhD student. And that's when he started doing this as a chemist. And so, yeah, it's just mind blowing to me what people are doing these days and thinking that they can get away with.
How do you think you can get away with it? But then also, like, how can you be so smart and so dumb at the same time? that, I mean, it's just, I mean, it's dumb to hurt people like that, first of all, but it's also dumb to think that you're not going to get caught. Everybody has there's cameras everywhere now. Every front door has a camera now.
To me, it's the ignorance too of like, oh, I don't like the way that the baby's crying, so let's make the baby cry more by making him sick.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Okay,
a red
come
flag
on.
right there. You've obviously never had kids before.
No.
If anything, he should have been dropping off, snacks and cocoa melon and stuff like that, not poisoning the baby.
Kids are 100 times worse when they're sick than when they're not. Yeah, he did not think that went through. It's this crazy story though.
Yeah, it makes me think, like, I know people in medicine sometimes cut corners, sometimes for money, sometimes for just to save time, or they just think that this is going to be helpful in some way, but it never pays off. Like, you're going to eventually get caught, and you're going to eventually get caught up in it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think back on that story we covered a while back of the dentist that poisoned his wife and how he used his dental license to get hold of substances that he wouldn't have been able to without a dental license. And so, yeah, I'm sure that kind of stuff happens way too often.
So tell me what happened at Burning Man. What happened there?
So Burning Man, right? The infamous kind of hippie gathering, a lot of drugs, totally Gary Nice thing, right? Which is very sarcastic for those that don't know our humor, right? We were probably the purest two guys you can ever get on the same podcast. But anyway, so Burning Man happens essentially, and I've learned all this term, right? It happens about 4.5 hours north of Reno. So you fly into Reno, then you take this like paved road, and then you take a 5-mile dirt road, and it's in the middle of this dried up lake. Right. And so this year, which doesn't happen normally, there's a bunch of rain during Burning Man. And what happens is this old lake bed starts becoming really clay. Right. So it's the type of clay that like hugs onto itself. So as you start walking, your first step gathers some mud, and then that mud gathers some mud. And all of a sudden, within your like 10th step, your feet weigh 20 pounds because of how much dirt are on your shoes. Right. You can imagine that this being where everyone's at, hundreds of thousands of people are there at Burning Man. These are cars trying to get out, right? They're canceling the actual event. People don't want to leave, etc. I mean, they're trying to leave, but they can't because they literally can't get out. What it created was this thing where there was hundreds of thousands, I mean, tens of thousands of people, almost 100,000 people out in the middle of nowhere in this playa bed that were stranded. They could not get out, right? And so you see these videos of like people covering their shoes, walking out to go and try and get to the paved road so they can get hitchhiked. But really, the majority of these people were just stuck there days on end trying to get out. And now, once the weather's finally slowed down, they're actually trying to drive out. And now there's this huge traffic jam of these people trying to leave Burning Man, but they can't. It's an absolutely like crazy situation. But yeah, they were really kind of like duck and shelter. You can't leave. You can't like ration all of the food and stuff that you have.
Well, yeah, that's the thing about Burning. I've never been to Burning Man, and I don't plan on going, but I have talked to people who've gone to it. There's nothing there. It's in the middle of nowhere. There's no water. There's no food. There's nothing. So you have to, whatever you bring, you have to bring in, or whatever you're going to eat and drink, you have to bring in. You have to pack it in. So yeah, how much time can they actually be out there and survive?
And a lot of times too, they get serviced, right? Porta potties get serviced, water gets brought out, old water gets taken away, and they couldn't do that this year. No truck could get in or out, and so the porta potties were overflowing. There was no additional help from water resources, etc. And so everyone was like, "Hey, you got to just buckle down and like help each other out." And so I've heard there's a handful of people that like one of them got electrocuted because their generator was in water, right? I don't think there's anybody that like starved or had any food ration issues, but it was kind of a crazy scene while it was all unfolding.
Yikes. That kind of ties in. It makes me think I think of Burning Man in the middle of nowhere, I think of New Mexico. And I know recently there's been a dentist that has been practicing down there without a license.
Yeah. So he had a license, right? He's gone to school. It's not like he wasn't properly trained, but he got his license revoked back in 2019. And then he just kept practicing anyway. And so I'm wondering, why did it take this long for them to recognize it, right? I was curious if he was like billing out his claims under a different license or a different associate or something, but he just finally got caught again and is now getting put into jail for it. Or I guess he's going to go through the process, might end up in jail, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just curious too. My thought is like, how often is this happening where unlicensed people are practicing? I mean, if you go into the billing world, people are billing out erroneously all the time under other associates that they shouldn't be, etc. The owners billing out for themselves even though they didn't do the work. It's just a mess. And so I'm curious how many unlicensed dentists are out there actually practicing in general,
Again,
how
this
rampant
goes
this
back
is.
to, how do you think that you're not going to get caught? It goes back to the first story we were just talking about. Like, how do you lose your license and then think that that's not eventually going to catch up to you? Or is it just, I can't do anything else and this is how I pay my bills, so I'm just going to keep doing it until it's game over?
Seriously, I have no idea. It is fascinating to me the way that some people's mind works
That's crazy. Do you know why he lost his license the first time?
for billing fraud. He was
Okay.
billing out to insurances erroneously, and now he's gotten caught again in it 4 years later. And so that's why I'm thinking he had
Because
to
they
have
don't,
billed out
if
under
you
a
do
different
fraud on,
associate.
if you do fraud on billing, so let's say there's somebody out there and they're listening and they're doing fraud, they're billing out things that they shouldn't, and they get caught, do they just automatically revoke your license, or is it like, okay,
No,
that's bad, don't do? There's a process.
you go before a license board. Yeah, you go before the board in your state in order to get your license revoked.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but we got a quick segment for you that's called Ask Gary, and we have some people that have been sending in marketing questions that I think will really help you. If you'd want to send in your question, all you have to do is send in an email to askgary@smcnational.com, or you can leave a comment or DM us, and we're happy to answer it that way too. So today's question comes in from George, and his question is, what does a good marketing budget look like as far as the dollar amount? And if this is a really hard question to answer because it really depends on what your goals are. So I'm not going to answer it in dollars, but I'm going to answer it in percentage. Rule number one is never ask a marketing guy, how much should we spend? That is the worst thing you can ask them because they want to spend to the moon, right? Really what you should be looking at is the percentage of your total revenue in marketing budget. So you want to take a percentage. So 1 to 2% of your total revenue is a really small marketing budget, and you're probably not going to grow. So if you make $100,000 in total revenue every single month, 1% of that is going to be $1,000. 2% would be $2,000. If you are going to really want to grow, you have to be above 3% or more to be able to grow. And if you want to really see explosive growth, usually that's going to be in that 4 to 7% range. Now, when you get into massive growth or really needing to like add an associate, or you added a bunch of new operatories that you need to fill, you added a new hygienist that you need to fill their schedule, then that's when you get into that like 6 to 10% range. And that's the general range, 1 to 10%, depending on what you're trying to do. Obviously, this is for GP. When you get into like full arch marketing, your budget can be as high as 20% of your total revenue, because that's a totally different beast. So hopefully that helps you.
Got it. So at first they're gonna like slap your wrist and say, hey, don't do that, here's a fine, that's bad. And then unless it's like super bad, I'd imagine, so then you get in trouble. So he got in trouble probably multiple times. Then finally they're like, okay, we're done. And then he just decided, I'm just gonna keep it moving anyways. It makes me think of this story I heard about people in, I think it was in Atlanta, or maybe it was Las Vegas, it was somewhere, a big city, and they were doing cosmetic surgeries on women without a license. They were doing it like in hotel rooms and stuff like that, and then somebody died and they got caught. And again, it just goes back to like, what are you thinking? First of all, what are you thinking to the person that's going to a hotel room to get that kind of surgery done? But also, what are you thinking on, you're not going to get caught? It's just a matter of time until you get caught.
Yeah, I have no idea. It's wild to me. I think that from a statistical standpoint, if I think about this like rationally, there has to be a layer of people that are getting away with it, that aren't making the news, that sit there and propagate this whole idea of like, oh, I'm going to be one of the ones that do get away with it. I don't know.
And then they probably tell people, right? And they're probably
Right.
like, yeah, no, this is how I do it. This is the hustle. This is the game. You just do it. I've been doing it for 20 years and I've never been caught. And they've just never, for whatever reason, they haven't fallen into the trap of getting caught. And then somebody else is like, okay, I'll do it too. And they go bigger and better, right? They're going to do more than the person before. And yeah, it's just a matter of time.
I think it's the same thing with like tax stuff, right? Like there's this gray area where people are like, here's how you can get away with your tax fraud. And it's like, they're not going to be that explicit. They're not calling it tax fraud. It's like, here's how you can like save on your taxes, but in reality, it is illegal to do what you're doing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, good talk today. You have a good one.
All right. Thanks.
Peace.